Hello, everyone. I am Tracy Themes, co-founder of Sophia Financial Group and Sophia Wealth Academy with my business partner, Kamal Basra. We're a full-service financial planning and investment management firm located on Vancouver, BC's west side. Since we opened, we've been dedicated to delivering excellence in professional, holistic investment management and creating a platform for financial inclusion, education, and inspiration. We believe that money is power, the power to create personal peace of mind and the power to make the world a better place. Wise Money Talks is our online education program with the objective to help you gain control over all aspects of your relationship with money. We want you to be the boss of your money and not the other way around. Money, as I'm sure you've learned, is never just about the money. This season in particular, our offerings are dedicated to building resilience and confidence so you can move forward in your financial life with strength and conviction. I'm so appreciative of our credible speakers who are so willingly able to share their time, energy, and wisdom with us. They bring new ideas and considerable life experience to their teachings. I am so excited to hear Sandy tonight. Thank you from both Kamal and I. I'm also grateful to our webinar hosting and marketing teams for managing all those backstage details and everything that goes into presenting these wonderful speakers and their important life-changing messages. Again, thank you. And so, for now, I'm going to sign off, leaving you in their capable hands. Have fun, everybody, and remember, we're here if you need us.
Thank you, Tracy. Hi, I'm Joanne Lozay, and I am thrilled to be your host for the Sophia Wealth Academy webinar series. Before we get started, I'd like everyone to introduce themselves in the chat function and tell us your name and where you're joining us from. This webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to the Sophia Wealth Academy YouTube channel within the next week or so. You will receive an email once it goes live. Just as a reminder, if you missed any of our previous webinars, they are all now available on our YouTube channel as well. Feel free to share these with friends and family. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen. Even though Sandy won't be answering questions until her presentation is done, you can upload your questions at any time, and if there's something pressing, then we can address it right away. And now it is my absolute pleasure to be introducing tonight's speaker, Sandy Gerber, who is a multiple award-winning communications and marketing strategist who recently presented on the internationally acclaimed TEDx stage to rave reviews. I was there, it was fabulous. Well, I was online. Having founded 3 successful companies and authored 2 books, Sandy champions the power of emotional appeal through language in all of our relationships and the effects words can have on how we label our lives. She is a certified neuro-linguistic programming practitioner and the visionary of the emotional magnetism communication technique and is currently working on a book on the topic, which should be launched in 2022. Sandy has also presented at conferences and programs all across North America and has personally coached hundreds of people on effective communication techniques. Known for her engaging and fun visual speaking style, Sandy is passionate about helping people to communicate with anyone, anywhere, and is no stranger to Sophia Wealth Academy. In fact, she has been extremely influential in helping to launch the Sophia Wealth Academy online, and I have had the distinct pleasure of working with Sandy for part of this process. But what I did not know about Sandy is that she has a twin sister. It's just another fun fact. And now, without further ado, I'm happy to pass you over to Sandy, who will be talking about money and offering key strategies for making these conversations more productive and thoughtful. Over to you, Sandy.
Thanks so much, Joanne. Hello, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm thrilled to be here. And a big thank you to Tracy and Kamal, who just provide this remarkable forum for women and men to learn and empower themselves with knowledge. So thank you, full of gratitude for all of you tonight. And a special thank you to all of you who are attending and joining us today. I have, please feel free to, I have my chat window open. I'm happy to see some comments. I can multitask and I'll look and see what you have to say there and be sure to answer some questions at the end. But I thrive off some of your engagement as well. So please feel free to share your comments and thoughts on what we're going to go through today. So I'll just share my screen here and we'll get into the presentation. I have quite a bit of information we're going to go through today, and I'm thrilled that you're joining me to learn about talking about money. Hold on, we've gone a second. Technical difficulties, one moment. All right, pull this up. All right, so to start with, I've said welcome. I want to get to what we're going to do tonight. So I'm very keen on understanding, delivering what we promised to you. And so there's really 4 things that you're going to get tonight. And this is my promise right from my heart. I want to make sure, first of all, you learn what's driving your financial choices. So we're going to go through quite a bit of information there, and you'll be able to self-assess what's truly driving your financial choices. Well, I also want you to know how to initiate a conversation about money. So some people have a lot of difficulty. You may be on the call today because you've had some trouble having that conversation start about money. And I also want to give you a tool. Maybe you've started the conversation and it hasn't gone well. And so give you an easy communication tool for difficult conversations. And one of my favorite communication tools that I've trained thousands of people in, and it's really easy to learn and use. And finally, at the end of this, I want to give you a whole bunch of free communication tools that you can use. I'll just say it right now. This isn't a sales pitch. I'm here purely out of service. I love doing these. My mission in life is to help people to communicate more effectively. So I have a bunch of free stuff for you at the end, and certainly will be shared with people who can attend as well. So you'll want to take advantage of that. So let's get started. The first thing is to kind of look at, why are we here, right? Why did you sign up for a webinar about talking about money? And it comes down to really 3 things. The first is that talking about money is uncomfortable for most people, right? And when I looked into how I was going to begin this webinar for Sophia Wealth Academy, I looked at some stats, and I first said, I want to understand. So I just want to get my chat up here just in case it just disappeared. One moment. I'll make sure that you're with me here. Not showing up. I wanted to make sure that with stats, I wanted to see what the landscape was like around this. And so I looked out and I saw a couple surveys stood out for me. So the first was TD Bank did a Love and Money survey in 2015. And what they found is that couples who talk regularly about money, probably not a surprise to Kamal and Tracy, but couples who talk regularly about money are happier than those who don't. And I know that sounds really simple, but if we think about it, it's about the conversation, right? Of being able and open and comfortable talking about money. So that was the first stat. The second was that people's spending and saving habits vary. I mean, we all know this, right? And this one survey that stood out for me was from Fidelity in 2015. And they had surveyed about over 1,051 couples. And they'd asked them, about money. And they said specifically, couples think, hilariously, couples think that they communicate well about money. However, out of that 1,000 plus couples, it was almost, let me just look at this, almost half, 45% of them didn't agree on financial decisions that they had currently or in the future for retirement. And that's because our spending and our saving habits vary greatly. The other third piece that I wanted to say about why we're here today is really around one other piece in all the stats that I found. We all have different opinions on what and how to use money, right? So we look at, the most reported source of stress is money in relationships. And it comes down to people are fighting and having conflict over the fact that they are doing different spending, different amounts of saving, maybe even some deceit about what their money habits are, or even excluding people in the relationship. It could be family as well, not just a partner, right? Excluding them from the decisions about money as well. So, we're here today to address the fact that I want to give you some tools to make all of those things a little better in your life. So to start with this whole session, I want to understand, first of all, a little bit more about you. So we're going to do a poll. Thank you, Lindsay, for pulling that up. And I want you to just go with your gut on these answers here. I want you to ask yourself, how important is saving or making money to you? So A, it's important. It provides you with a feeling of security. B, it's important because money helps you buy what you want and you deserve. C, it's very important. It's essential to save and invest for your future. Or D, you're kind of indifferent. Money seems to be a means to an end for you. You may even have a love-hate relationship with it. So go ahead and add your answer there, which one that most resonates with your gut. And we're going to get into why this will make a lot of sense to you as we go through the session together. Let's get a feel for where you sit. And so the results are going to come up here. Let's take a look, see. So we've got, 42, 47. So interesting. So A is, we're coming up with about 42% of the people on the call find that it's important, provides you with a feeling of security. We have less people feeling that it helps them buy what they want and deserve, or that they're indifferent. They're like 5% each of them. And then we have very important. It's important to save and invest for your future. So it's interesting. Ask yourself, how difficult was that to answer that question? Many people will be like, I don't understand some of those words, or you're hesitant to commit to an answer. You didn't get it wrong. It's just anybody can answer any of those options. But what's important is we need to understand, first of all, our emotional relationship with money. So if you're going to start talking about money, first thing you need to do is understand your emotional relationship with money. So I want to just share a little bit of mine. And it's really because your emotional relationship with money is tied to your immediate life experiences that you've had all through your life and as they change, and then also your upbringing. So this is a picture of my mother. And I wanted to just share with you my own experience and the surroundings I was brought up in and how that impacted my relationship with money. And it ties directly into what we're going to talk about next. So my mom, there was 4 kids in our family, 4 under 4, if you can believe it. That's why she would have an odd glass of wine now and then. So 4 under 4. And, she was raised in an environment where it was very important to be thrifty, very important to watch what they were spending. It wasn't because of lack of money. They just were really focused on, maybe the third answer there, investing, making sure there's security in the future, right? And so when we go shopping, the 3 girls with my mom for a dance dress or something, a special occasion at high school or university, it was a horrible experience. She wouldn't like shopping, right? She didn't like the experience of shopping. She would put something down on a list, she would go and get it, and she would look for the best deal, and she would basically make sure we had a guilt trip about, look, this dress better not be on the floor. We spent a lot of money on this and that. And that's just the way that she was. And this is what money became to me from my mom's perspective. It wasn't something that we would go and just spend money and shop for whatever. It was very focused. On my dad's experience, my dad worked at a job that he did not like for 30 years. He worked in a job that he didn't like because he wanted to, what was more important to him was having security for the family and providing for the family. And this was a creative man. I mean, unfortunately, both my parents have passed, but he was a really creative man and could have been the king of advertising. I mean, he really was remarkable and certainly made up for that in his own lifestyle. But the interesting thing about this is that he stayed in a career because his relationship with money was all about security and making sure that he provided. Now, he also came from modest means, and so that was his upbringing, right? So we bring these things with us, and Tracy, with the psychology background and her extensive experience with financial planning, we probably echo the thought here that it really does start with what your experience is when you're starting and you're young. And that affected my relationship with money and how I treated money in my life. And so what we need to do is look at what's actually emotionally driving our choices in regards to financial choices, right? Let's look at a way for you to understand what's driving those. And so I'm going to introduce you to a tool today that will help you self-assess your relationship with money and actually helps you talk about money. And so it's called emotional appeals. Now, I'm going to give you a little insight on how it was discovered. this was, this was not on my agenda. I didn't think this would happen, and certainly took over my entire life in a very positive way. It's actually led all the way to TED stage, right? So the discovery was I became a single mom. I remember this one night, and it was quite intense. It was like 3 a.m. All you moms that are out there that had young children, you could probably relate. You had to get to those extracurricular sign-up dates, where you had to get your kids into this activity or that activity. And apologize if there's men on the call, you've probably been in the same boat as well. It's and you're doing it at the end of your day, exhausted. It was one of those crazy nights where I'm trying to figure out, is he going into hockey? Is she going into skating? What's happening? And so I got this email from my ex-husband at the time, who was basically threatening me, saying, you're cut off. You're not going to do anything. You're on your own. And I had this moment of panic, right? Oh my goodness, how am I going to do this? 2 kids. I'm doing my own business here. How am I going to do this? And I started digging across the internet, and I started looking at, good ideas don't change. They just get evolved, and good information comes from all different decades. So I started thinking, I got to get some sales techniques. I got to grow my business fast, and I got to make sure that I have security for my children. So I started digging down this hole. And in that, I spent 10 years, 10 years reviewing what would motivate people to take action. As a marketer and a communication strategist, I had that studied. I knew how to do that academically. I knew how to actually do that, but I wanted to understand better sales techniques. I wanted to understand the psychology behind what motivates people to act emotionally, what triggers us. And so I spent 10 years of my life researching, going through all sorts of different practices, looking at this, and I applied at the first 10 years ago. As I'm digging through that rabbit hole, I came across this book. And this book was called The Magic Power of Emotional Appeal. It was from the 60s, looked like a comic book, right? It was just so weird. And it was like one of those, you're going to change your life. This is going to be amazing. And I was intrigued. So I read into it. It was a sales technique book. And so I started applying it to my business. A year later, I grew the company from my bedroom, where I had the kids write an in and out sign and put it on the door. I grew it to be one of British Columbia's top 100 fastest growing companies by using this technique. It's not manipulation. It's just understanding the behaviors people have and these 4 emotional appeals. And when your messaging connects to those, people listen, they are attentive, and they take action. So that's how that all came about. I started using it in target audience emotional needs exercises with my clients. I did, as I said, continue to look into this and evaluate this. This was a sales tool in the 60s, kind of died off. Nobody really did anything with it. And I was ignited by it. It became everything for me. I mean, ask my daughter's on the call here, ask her, it took over my life, and I couldn't help but share it with people because it fundamentally changed every relationship in my life for the better. So this is something that I want to share with you today. Went through a whole bunch of different things and different studies. And what it came down to was what I call the emotional appeal technique, which is really, in a nutshell, emotional magnetism. So what you're going to do is I'm going to share that with you today, because this is fundamental to how you talk about money. You're actually going to be able to use this in all areas of your life. But today we're talking about money, and I'll show how that applies. There's 4 main emotional appeals. So, and you can remember it by the acronym SAVE: safety, achievement, value, and experience. So everything you do, every decision you make is grounded in one of these emotional appeals. We have different degrees of these emotional appeals in us, but based on our life experience, based on our upbringing and life events, one of these is driving all your decisions primarily. So in my case, for example, achievement and experience are a nice blend. There's 2 for me, and my husband, his are safety and value. And I'll tell you a few stories and examples, and we'll get into this in detail. But what's really important to understand here is that emotional appeals magnetize our attention. So, when you're driving along the street and you see a billboard, and you keep driving along the street, you see another billboard, keep driving along, and then all of a sudden you see that billboard and you read it. Why did that billboard stand out for you more than the other 2? And the reason is because that message connected to your emotional appeal. We are also preoccupied. I'll talk about this a little later. And so these messages, even when you're talking to someone in your home, how you communicate to them. You know, when you're asking them something and then they, oh, honey, can you get milk from the store and bring it home? And then they come home empty-handed. You're like, why didn't you hear that? Right? So there's certain messages when you connect to their emotional appeal, you will activate their motivation to listen and to act. So let's dig into what these are, because this is exciting stuff. Now, I can't see the chat. Let me just see here how I can get that going. Oh, that's too bad. Okay, well, I'm going to keep plowing through, and I'll please put your questions in the Q&A, because I'm happy to answer those. And you know, we can, Joanne, even if you want to poke in every once in a while to mention the chat, because I can't see it, or Lindsay, that would be great. I'm happy to. I'd love to have that level of engagement with everybody.
Sandy, I think if you exit the full screen, you might be able to see your chat.
Okay, let's try it. Then you can't see. It's presentation mode though, right? You want to do that. Let's try it one more time here.
The top right-hand view, like the view on the top right-hand corner. If you click that.
Oh, sorry, everybody. Yeah, I'm not.
On the bottom, it says, you know, the different views.
I do these every day, so it's surprising. But anyways, let's go with it, because what's most important is that you guys get value out of this. So let me continue. So the 4 emotional appeals are here, and really, I'm going to go into each of them in detail. What I want you to do is just pay attention to what's resonating with you, because at the end of this, you'll be able to, I'm telling you, you'll have a shift in knowledge of your motivations. That's quite amazing. So as I mentioned, all of these are based on your upbringing and your life experiences, and they shift over time as well. You know, if you're motivated by safety, these are condensed descriptions and explanations of what these are. But if you're motivated by safety, it's really about security, health, sensibility, and simplicity. I won't read through all of these because we're going to go into them in detail, but they're here on the screen for you to see it in a snapshot, the difference between each of these. And what's interesting about this exercise is you'll also be able to immediately go, oh, my partner, my husband, my boss, my this, they are these, right? You'll be able to kind of shift into, yes, I understand why they make the decisions they do. It actually provides a huge amount of clarity, and most importantly, empathy for the people in your life. You understand why they're making the choices they are, why they may be more difficult, right, than what your view is. So when we get into emotional appeals, let's start there. We'll want to look at, why do you emotionally need money? And so to look at the 4 emotional appeals in detail, I'm looking at it, I'll give you an overview of each of them, and then we're going to look at how money is specifically for that. So if we're looking at safety, what motivates people who have safety as an emotional appeal? And I've listed them here. It's really about security. It's about stability. What motivates you and what you need, you emotionally need, right, is this feeling of sensibility, protection, security, common sense, ease, like your self-preservation, right? So this is really important. And so when you look at, if you're motivated by safety, what does money mean to you, right? It means that it's providing you with security of feeling. It's money for you. You use it to buy things to keep people safe, to keep people healthy. You know, maybe, you know, I've got examples up there. Maybe you have a big backup in place, emergency medical supplies. You've got all your things in order. Safety is extremely important to you. And you need a reliable income source, right? So consistent payment schedule is important, no surprises. You're going to minimize the risk of not having money, essentially, right? And that it's important and necessary for important purchases. And so, you know, like someone who's motivated by safety, emotional appeal, typically are in a stable job, not necessarily enjoying that job, but it's too risky for them to move out of that career, right? So they're in a safety, if they're motivated by safety, a lot of people through the courses and the people that I've trained in this, a lot of the safety motivated emotional appeal people are in careers to help others as well, to give service, right? So to care for others. So that's self-preservation for themselves or others. So you want to look at that and you say, like, is it really important for you to have a plan around your money? You know, there's another one in here that's even more so, but this is what safety is. For you, this is how money is if you have safety emotional appeal. And when we look at achievement, so you're going to ask yourself, which one of these is really resonating with me? And as I mentioned previously, you may have, 50% is about achievement, 50% is safety, but one is usually predominant. So achievement, these are people who are motivated by setting goals, accomplishments, making, performance, competition. Also important to them that they have an appearance of achievement as well, right? And to different degrees, of course, right? Some of us really care about our possessions and our appearance and our belongings, and others just, they want to reward themselves for the hard work they put in. So these are key motivators for people who are motivated by achievement. And I have this one, like I'm motivated by achievement. I like setting goals. I like achieving things. I like the fact that I'm constantly growing and constantly, I'm not really competitive, but I like the fact that is achievement is what emotionally motivates me. So when we look at money, how does that apply for money, right? So if you have someone in your life that's motivated by achievement, or you yourself are motivated by achievement, then this is how money shows up for you. It helps you achieve your goals, right? So maybe that, no question, I'm going to get a gym membership. I'm going to start my business. I'm going to expand it. It enables you to purchase the things that you believe you deserve for all the hard work. It makes you look good. It makes you feel great. You could be rewarding yourself with all sorts of things because of the hard work and accomplishments you've achieved. And it motivates you to excel, right? To be independent, to improve performance. I had a couple of team members when I started my business early, when we went through emotional appeals. I mean, everyone who's ever worked with me in the many companies, I've always had them go through and tell me, what's your emotional appeal? I never assume another person's. I always start the conversation and have them self-assessed. It's really dangerous to assume someone else's. And actually, people can pick it out right away. But I had a couple of employees that were motivated by achievement. And it sure was important that their title, when their performance review was, things like that. And just knowing that made me a better manager of them. So it's important that you're paid what you're worth if achievement is your emotional appeal, and that your belongings and your possessions reflect your success. So, and there's nothing wrong with this. And all of us have a little bit of this in us. We all need recognition for the efforts that we put in, but some people more than others have this as a primary emotional appeal. How are we doing with the chat? Any comments so far on this? Does anyone want to chime in on, we got any comments on the chat?
Nothing so far, just a lot of people introducing themselves from all over. Oh, fantastic.
Okay, good, thank you. That's really helpful because I'm achievement and experience. So it's important that you're having a good experience to me. So here we go. Let's go.
Just so you know, they're quiet taking notes.
Okay, good. Wonderful. Yeah, that's awesome. And by the way, at the end, I have these tools. I even have a quiz, guys, that you can do, that you can put it on. I'm not going to spam you. You put in your email. It will give you a full detailed report of your primary emotional appeal based on, I think it's 20 questions. And that's on my site. So you'll have a tool there, emails a report to you. All right, so value, right? This is really, a lot of conflict that we have in relationships comes down to this. Now, I'll tell you a story about my husband, and he is driven by value. And so this is people that are emotionally driven by worth, quality. I'd have to say, Tracy, you've got to be high up there on having value as your emotional appeal. It also dictates what your career choices are as well. But this is around, what is your quality of your time and money spent on things? What's the return on your investment? How are you growing? How are you saving? How are you investing? What's the potential? And most importantly, what does it look like at the end? Like, what is your legacy? Are you going to leave something of significance to the people in your life? That's what drives people with the value emotional appeal. So when it comes to money, I probably said quite a few of them, but you desire, really, time is money. I mean, people who are impatient with wasting their time, they really feel that if value is their emotional appeal. It was very important when I had clients coming in, I tried to assess their emotional appeal. And I would change my messaging based on picking up clues and cues on their emotional appeal. So I'd say, if a client was value, for example, and I had suspected they might be value, which you can, over time, I've been doing this for 10 years, I can pick it up pretty quickly. I would say, to maximize your time, why don't we book a meeting for Tuesday at 2:00, right? Something like that. So using that wording immediately breaks their preoccupation and they can actually connect with you. So if money if value is your emotional appeal, it's really important that your asset ownership, your property, your economy, your future security, you really hate wasting your time, money, and you detest waste, like absolutely detest waste. And that could be on the economy side as well as the environmental side. And then quality received from money spent is crucial. You love a good sale, you have calculated spending, and you're driven to create a legacy, as I mentioned previously, from your accomplishments and your success. So one story I want to just add here. So, I use this quite often because I think it illustrates exactly how people can get into these little arguments over the stupidest little things. But once you understand your emotional appeal, it can help mitigate that. So my husband's driven by value and I'm experienced. And I came home one day, I didn't feel like making dinner. He didn't feel like making dinner. And so I said to him, why don't we skip the dishes? What do you think? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. Sure, no problem. So I started looking through options. I said, oh, Freshie. I feel like Freshie. How about you? And he said, no. I was like, well, why? Why don't you like Freshie? He's like, it's a block and a half away. And I was like, so? And he's like, I can't validate that expense. And of course he can't, right? Because value is his emotional appeal. So I looked at him and said, of course you can't. I get that. I understand that. And off was the opportunity to have a fight, right? Like it was that simple. We went, I just turned to him afterwards. I said, so how far does it have to be before it's valuable for you? And it was about a 20-minute drive. So now I know that anytime we go through skip the dishes, he feels that he's getting value from, this service. And that's important to him. Third, the other one here is experience. And this is my other one. I mean, people who have experience as an emotional appeal, they're a challenge. I could say that because I'm driven by this and my daughter is also driven by it. No offense, Linz. But the thing is, it's really because we're curious. We're curious. We love change. We love progress. This is like, we cannot stand monotony, routine. Novelty is really important to us. And we love to learn, we love to grow, we love adventures and thrills and all the things that are listed there. It's really important that we desire things, that there's an impact. So how does that show up for you in money? Well, you can probably imagine by now, budgeting's not a fun experience. And so we end up with, it's a very structured process. It's a financial planning, like, again, Kamal and Tracy must see this so often with their clients that, they make it an enjoyable experience for them, right? Because, it's important to them and they can help with experience. If it turns into a learning experience, we like doing that. But essentially, we'd rather have someone else manage our finances. We buy things to create a memory or for a change in routine. We use money to have or give experiences. We're motivated by the potential future. So you think about Apple iPhone has a big release. The people who are motivated by experience are in line waiting for the next phone. They want the next future thing. It could be achievement too, so they can say they have the most recent phone. But most of us are looking at what's the possibility? What could happen in the future? What experience can I have? And I used to say, it's memories and moments for me. That's what it's all about. And I didn't even realize when I was saying that about emotional appeals. That was in my 20s and 30s. It's all about memories and moments for me. And that's truly what it is. We feel okay with spending money on our development, on our training, on our learning, and we settle for less income and more passion typically and impact in our jobs. There's more creativity, and these people are driven by that. One of the examples here, we love to create and innovate. So money, as I said in the previous first question, was really, is it a means to an end? Because that's for people who are driven by the experience emotional appeal. And it's funny, like when I look at money, I'll give you another example here for me for experience. I had been saving since the kids were really little. I had been saving to give them an extraordinary experience. And I wanted it to be one that would be life-changing. I wanted it to be when they were just graduating high school, before they got into university, or wherever they chose to go in their next step. And basically, I wanted them to have a life-changing experience that would give them a different view of the world. And so I knew I was going to take them to a different part of the world, that we were going to see poverty, that we were going to contribute to others, And so I saved and saved and saved and saved, which is really, really hard for someone who's experience driven. So, but I knew that it was going to be this experience. And 2 years ago, or three years ago and 2 years ago, I took my son to Africa and I took my daughter to India, and we saw extreme poverty, and we built a school, right? And we were in an environment that's life-changing, right? That had provided this filter of the life that they would never have seen if we hadn't done that. And so for me, being driven by experience, that's how I used money. Money was, I was able to save for that to create that future experience. So when you discover your own emotional appeal, I've got them back up on the screen. And as I mentioned, there's a quiz here that you can use. It's on my site, sandygerber.com. And it's essentially going to answer that question. What do you emotionally need to be happy? What do you emotionally need to be activated to listen and act? And there's more detail in that. So are you, safety? Are you achievement? Are you value? Are you experience? So let's do a little, you've gone through the content, you probably have an inkling on where you're sitting. I would like to ask you to just answer one. We're going to pull up the poll. Why do you primarily emotionally need money? And so let's ask that question. Which one do you think you are? Safety, achievement, value, or experience? So you can go ahead and put your answer in there, and let's take a look and see who we have. And don't worry, if you're landing between two, it's okay. Just pick one for now. And then when you do the quiz, you'll get that breakdown. So which one are you? Safety, achievement, value, or experience?
So Sandy, just a quick to pop in, just to let you, a few people had a few aha moments while they were doing that. And Barbara said that she knows why she's spending so much on books and trainings. And someone else had a laugh over budgeting is not a fun experience for you.
Oh, good. Okay, now I see the chat coming up with the poll up. That's weird. Okay, that's great. Yeah, it's true. So yeah, and also with the life experience, I mean, we're in a pandemic, right? So it's unbelievable how much this is shifting to safety, right? Because of our concerns right now. I mean, it's not surprising, right? So life events will change. So when my parents passed away, they passed away within 8 months of one another. It was very difficult. And being experience and achievement, I switched from achievement to safety. I mean, it became all about safety, right? When you lose two of your parents, when you lose your parents and become an orphan, it's life-changing. And so that really became important to me, safety. I started taking, I was emotionally motivated to do different things that I had been before. So it's important to know that this will change over time. So we had a lot of people with safety there. Now, what's interesting, 45% at safety, we have 36 at experience, we have 14 at value, and 5% at achievement. Yeah. So it's interesting, and it's really, I find it fascinating when I wish I could see all your faces, because when I share this usually with people and in a training session or a speaking in person event, I can see it in their eyes where they're like, oh my gosh, now I understand why he's like this or she's like that or I'm like this. And so it was that moment that I had all those years ago when I read the book. I sat down with a glass of wine on a really bad used couch that I had, secondhand couch, a blanket, and the book, and I devoured it in one sitting, right? And it changed my life, and I hope that this will help you. So what I'd like to do now is switch gears a little bit. We've talked about emotional appeals, and now I want to talk about, you're probably asking yourself, what's my partner's emotional need for money, right? So if I know what my emotional appeal is, what's your other significant other, or it could be a boss, or it could be a friend, or it could be your tribe, someone in your life that you're communicating with frequently, what do you think their emotional need is for money? And so I want to share something with you here. When we start looking at how we're going to talk to people, it's important to understand where they're coming from, right? Emotionally, what is it that's appealing to them emotionally? And what we do is align our message to their emotional appeal to minimize conflict and disagreement. Like I gave you the example with skip the dishes, right? So that I knew that he was value, it was easy to say, oh, I understand why that's an issue for you. Of course, I support that decision, right? And you have this empathetic way about you now because you have this added knowledge of what your partner, your friend, your boss, your whoever, sibling, what emotionally motivates them. So this is an example here I just wanted to bring up quickly. This motorcycle here, my husband, Chris, he has a hobby of refurbishing old antique motorcycles. And so, I'm really proud of him. It's really fascinating and sexy to watch. And so when he was doing this, he was meticulous. I mean, I know nothing about motorcycles, and I'm as you'll see, I'm an extremely curious person. I was asking all sorts of things about the build. It was a fascinating process to watch. And when he took it to get it powder coated, he took it to the painter. He had researched the person, his value and safety. He'd researched the person, make sure he got the best quality job done for the money he was going to spend. He took it to him. He was so excited, left it with him for 2 weeks, came back, looked at it, and there was imperfections in the paint job. And so he's very upset. And he's thinking, now how do I deal with this right now? Because this guy, I don't know him that well. I do know that in the last couple of times that I've spoken to him, he's talked about all the other great things he's done. He's talked about, he's very, has a great reputation, was really focused on his reputation. And so he thought to himself, I guess my head, my voice was in his head. And he was like, okay, what emotional appeal do you think this guy is? And so he's like, I think he's achievement. So what he did is he first said to him, I found some imperfections and I think we're going to need to have you do it again. And the guy responded very negatively. No way. I have a waiting list. There's no way I can do it. It's really good shape. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. And so my voice in his head, what's his emotional appeal? He recognized it was achievement. He turned that around and said to him, you know what? You've always done such amazing work. And, I came to you because everybody says you're awesome at what you do. So just that phrase alone sets him into a state where he's no longer preoccupied thinking about other things. He is focused. You're talking to his emotional appeal. At which point he turned to him and he said, so when do you think you could have this to your level of excellence? Not fixed, but to your level of excellence. And the guy said, how's Tuesday? So this is just a tiny little example of the power of words that we have in communication and to connect with people, because that's our goal, is to connect with people, to understand each other better and make some decisions together. So that's one example. So when we talk about messaging, I just want to point out a few things here. It's really important you switch to a connection mind state. Like, you're probably picking up on this, right? We need to think about the other person, not yourself. You need to give them their reason for listening. We often go into the situation where we say, here's what we want, and this is what I'm going to say. And what we need to do is we don't want to tell people what you want. You want to tell them what they want to hear emotionally, what their emotional appeal wants to hear. So you put your specific listener's emotional appeal in your message. And I'm going to take you through how to do that. The message is never about you. It's how your listener needs to use their content. When someone's talking, I'm talking to you. And what you're listening for is, how am I going to use this? How is this going to change my life? That's what you're hearing. So you want to make sure that when you're thinking about initiating a conversation with someone, specifically about money, which we know has been troublesome, as the stats indicated at the beginning, we need to be prepared. We need to make sure we have that message clearly defined before you have that conversation. And I'll give you some examples of how to do that. You don't talk to everyone the same way. You communicate to the 4 emotional appeals. So I mentioned that there's 3 siblings and myself in the family. And it's interesting because every one of us has a different emotional appeal. My sister is my twin sister, who's on the other side of Canada because there's too much energy with Sandy and Kathy in the same space. But she is safety. She's driven by safety all the way. She would be dying if she had to do this presentation to you. And she likes her security. She likes her stability. She likes her routine. That's who she is. And we respect her and love her for it. My older sister is achievement. She is doing so successfully in her career, and that is her goal. She loves that. And recognition is very important to her. We don't just say thank you once when she gives us a gift. We say it about 10 times, right? It's important to her. And then my brother, he's value. He's been saving his penny since he was a kid. It's been very important for him he's a stockbroker, right? So money is really important. He watches and tracks how his value is going up and down and how he's creating his legacy for the future. And as I mentioned, mine is predominantly experience. So there's always an opportunity to uncover a person's emotional appeal. So how do we initiate the conversation? So knowing Knowing the 4 emotional appeals, you can plan your message. So I'm just going to assume some of you may have had some difficulty communicating to people about money. And the first step starts with initiating that conversation. So knowing that let's say you're talking to someone who's motivated by safety, how would you get them to have a conversation about money? That's the first step, right? In Tracy's TEDx talk that she does, and she's talking about that original conversation that you're going to have about paying the bill. It's all about the messaging there, right? So when we look at safety, this is a way that you could get someone to be open to the idea of having the conversation. Can we set up a plan? The things that are underlined are what directly motivates someone with safety emotional appeal. So can we set up a plan together to ensure we have a steady income to pay our bills and no financial surprises? Now you've got their attention. Or you could say it a different way. Can we have a quick conversation, right? It's ease. Ease is important to people who are motivated by safety. And we want to get on the same page with our spending and savings. So it's really important that you pay attention. It's not just about, hey, can we have a chat about our finances? Or tonight, can we talk about, let's go through a budget? It's not that. It's the words you're saying that really matter. If you want to have that connection and make it easier and set yourself up for success, how you're asking that question matters. Here's another example. So if we looked at, you're going to talk to someone who's motivated by achievement, you work so hard for your money. Can we have a short discussion about spending and saving as a couple to make sure we're aligned? Or a different way, can we have a conversation to discuss how our finances will provide you with what you need, while my need for my emotional appeal is met too? I had a client once that, they said that, so my TEDx coach, is fabulous person, an outstanding person. She started learning all this through my TED Talk scripting and all the practice I was doing. And she started sharing this with her husband. And one day they were, starting the day in the shower, and not a bad way to start the day. And they started having a conversation. And he was like, you know what, I think I might enter that race, this car race. And he has big, really fancy, fast car. She had a very sturdy, safe, reliable automobile. And so she's predominantly driven by safety. He's predominantly driven by experience. And so he said, I'm going to enter this race. And she said, oh, that sounds awesome. I'm going to support you in that. That sounds great. He said, yeah. So I think I'm going to use my car. And what I'll do is essentially, no, I think I'm going to use your car in part of this race. And what happened is she's like, wait a minute. That's going to impact my day, my work, my schedule. Wait a minute. And her safety radar went off. This is how we have these issues in our communication. We're not aware of what's emotionally driving them. So when she learned this and started having the conversation, instead of having silent treatment all day, they were quickly able to say, wait a minute, it's really important to me that you have that experience, but I also need my car, right? And I have to have that security for my clients, my business, my things. So they were able to have that conversation. Another example here, if someone was value driven, can we have a short chat about the finances to make sure we're spending and saving to meet our goals? And can we talk about our money growth plans and what we can do now for our future together? Remember, these lines, these sentences that are, or words that are underlined, are direct triggers, right, for people who are motivated by value. And then experience. Well, that slide and the people that joined me that said that they laughed out loud about budgeting, you have to be a little more creative to get these people to sit down and talk about money. So can we go through our finances together to create an easy tool for our future goals and adventures, right? Just saying that gets their attention, because what you want is agreement, right? You want is connection. Another way I've actually personally used this, and how about we book off some time this weekend to review our finances and order in dinner as a reward. So you're actually saying, this will be a good experience for you, right? We can do it together. Let's book some time off. Let's talk about money, and let's have an experience at the same time. So you see that slight difference you can make. I mean, it's not slight, it's quite significant, the effect of this, but just by watching what words you're using can have dramatic effect on your conversations. Any comments or questions on this so far? We're going to move into the last segment here.
Nothing so far, Sandy. Just someone was wanting the name of the book, and then we were able to put that up in the chat section. And
Okay.
I think they're just busy taking notes.
Awesome. All right, so this is one that I had mentioned previously is, I've trained so many people in this tool. It's not one I created, it's one I endorse though. It's fabulous. And so I'm going to take you through it. Really will change how you have conversations, especially difficult ones. I want to point out here that, everybody's talking, but few are listening, right? And really listening to understand, right? So the key here is that, people are, as I mentioned previously, are preoccupied. You have to break through that preoccupation, especially even now with everything we're going through in the world. It's really hard to stay focused on things. We're distracted, we're tired. It's overwhelming, right? Frankly. So it's really important that by understanding people's emotional appeals, using the tool that I'm going to share with you, it will help you to improve your communication effectiveness. So I mentioned connection mind state. I want to go through that one more time here. And it's really about not you. You really got to get that from this session together is this will improve your ability to understand others, change the focus from inward to outward, right? I set the intention off of me and onto others. And really that you're demonstrating your concern for their situation. This tool will help you live that. You want to know that people need to know that you're taking the situation seriously with positive regard, and you need to understand a person's emotional appeal. I think the biggest communication problem is that we don't listen to understand, we listen to reply, right? And so we're not even hearing it, right? We're on the next sentence already. So I just want you to be aware that in order to get into a place where you're going to have a conversation and get through specifically a difficult conversation, like talking about money, this tool will be helpful. So it's called EARS. I love this shot. He's just so cute. EARS, and it's an acronym, and I'll go through it in detail. As I said, I've used it, and I really I trained a whole organization on this a couple of years ago, over 200 people. And I couldn't believe the feedback I got days later from people just saying, wow, this has changed how I talk to my family, my friends, everything. I didn't even know this stuff. And it really should be taught in school. Most important thing about this is questioning needs to be matched with listening, right? So there's 4 components to EARS. We'll get into that. I want to show you here. So the first is encourage, right? So when you're going to have a conversation with people, nothing's worse, right, than you're trying to have a conversation with someone and they're not encouraging you to do that, right? They're either not giving you eye contact, they're not verbally encouraging you by saying, yes, or that kind of stuff. When you're talking to someone and you just feel like they're gone, right? They're not with me here, right? You need to remember that when you're talking to someone and you want their engagement, you need to show that encouragement. So that is really important. Nodding, this is where body language is essential. I train on body language as well, but we're not covering that today, but there's some blog posts on my site and stuff that can help you with that. But this is really important, that encouragement. It's like when you're asking someone to initiate that conversation, it's really giving them eye contact, nodding, showing that you are actually listening. The next one is asking thoughtful and clarifying questions. So we'll use this as an example. Let's say someone came in, they had difficult customer service experience. This is a really good model used for conflict on customer service, or someone's having a really hard time and someone's very upset. This is what I've used and trained people to do. So first, I'd like to encourage you. Oh, I'm sorry you had that experience. Yes, I understand you're upset. How can I help you? Could you please tell me what happened? Right? So I just asked them a question. I'm going to go into 4 different types of questions in a bit, but this is a powerful set for you to use. And so you've encouraged them, you've asked them, and that's usually where we stop. Right? We say, okay, yes, tell me what the problem is. And you're like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Ask a few more questions. And then you're like, yes, I'll see what I can do. I'll ask my manager and see what I can do. And how does that leave the person? They don't feel heard. They don't feel understood. And in fact, that's not a healthy dialogue, right? You're not connecting. So there's 2 other steps to this, and valuable steps. The third is reflect. So this is where you actually show the person and they feel that they've been heard. And that's when you take a piece of their content and you reflect it back, right? We don't do this. And I really wish we were trained in this when we were little, right? It will change the world. So share what you heard, capture a piece of their info and reflect it back. And there's a way to do that essentially by saying, what I always use is, okay, great. Thank you. So tell me what the problem is. Yes. Ask a question. Okay. And when did that happen? And why did that happen? You're getting the information. Then you're feeling like the conversation is coming to an end and you say, so if I heard you correctly, this is this, right? So you're having that conversation. So if I understood you correctly, if I heard you correctly, and nobody, like, I mean, everybody loves that, right? Because what you're doing is you're honoring them and you're saying, this is what I gathered from the conversation. Please tell me, is that correct? And usually what will happen, if this is a high conflict conversation, they'll say, no, that's not what I said. What I need is this, right? And then you may have to do it again. Okay, so let me just make sure I've got this clear. Is this what I heard, right? Is this what you mean? And they'll say, yes, that's exactly what I mean. And what happens is now you form the rapport. You form that connection. You cannot have a conversation until you get to reflect. You can't connect with them because they're in their head. They're not listening. They're not hearing what you're saying. So you share what you heard and you end up getting more information. Also, for those on the call that are in sales, this is an excellent process to qualify. And then finally, how you end it up is you summarize it. Okay, so what I understand about this conversation, or what I understand about, we're talking about our budget, or what I understand about, your plans for financial planning, is that correct? This is what I feel that we've talked about. Is that accurate? And again, you're going in this nice back and forth, summarizing the main points, the action steps, what you've agreed to, and you have this lovely connection where you've actually made the person feel heard and understood. So when you look at the power of questions here, this is so powerful, like the powerful, but really people want credit for their thinking. So, I mean, I'm like a 3-year-old. I ask so many questions. My husband laughs because I'll go into a grocery store, I'll go into a store, I'll come out, I'll know the person's life story, what their biggest issue is of the day. I like asking questions of people. I like engaging with people. I'm in communications. So I like connecting with people and deepening my knowledge of them. Right. And I also try and kind of figure out, well, what's driving their emotional appeal? Like, what's important to them? People want to be asked questions. They want to give you their response. So they want to be asked. And the easiest way to diffuse a heated situation is to ask a question. Right. And that's through that ears process. You want to also make a note, don't ask too many, right? Because that can be annoying, feel like they're being interrogated. And really, I like this last piece here, which is really, I always think it's not about how are you, it's who are you, right? Who are you? Who's this person that I'm meeting, connecting with? I mean, it's hard that I can't connect with all of you right now. I'd be asking you questions, like just to try and figure out how can we connect even better, right? Who are you? What's motivating you? What's emotionally appealing for you? So that's important. So there's 4 types of questions. The first one, we have this down, closed questions. We're just 80% of the questions we ask are closed questions. And what that means is, how was your weekend? It kills a conversation. We give one word. How was your day? Fine. You get 1 or 2 words from someone, you've asked a closed question. There are times that you want that, right? You don't want to talk to the coworker who goes on and on for 15 minutes as you get to the office, or a family member, you may want that. But recognize that if you're trying to have engagement, you're trying to talk about money, you're trying to have this connection, you need to switch from closed questions to other types. So another type is open. And open, this is a great example of what you can do even with your own family after we get off the call. Go and ask some open questions, right? If they're up for it, right? It demands more of a response. And this is like, instead of saying, how was your weekend? Tell me about your weekend. What fun did you get up to this weekend? They're not going to say fine. So, it's a way to open the door. Think of it, open questions, open the dialogue, open the conversation. And, this was helpful with teenagers, no offense, Linz, but really this was helpful to say, instead of how was your day with my son, I'd get a grunt. I'd say, tell me about your day. Or what I'd say to my husband all the time is, what surprised you today? Right. And then he can't say fine. He has to have some answer. So it opens up a conversation. Another question that you can ask is a probing question. This is to get a little bit more, right? So more for the sales conversations and to dig a little deeper, right? So let's say, you've initiated the conversation about money and you'd say, so what would need to be in place for you to be happy about having that conversation, right? So first you're saying, are you open to having, not are you open because that's a closed question, but you'd initiate the way I suggested. And you'd say, tell me what's a good time for you to have a conversation so that we can, use one of those 4 that I mentioned. And then you'd say, so what else needs to be in place for you to be comfortable to have that conversation? You're probing for more information to set up that successful conversation. And then the last one is leading, certainly used very carefully here, because you're not manipulating people, but you are in a sales process, for example, it's to help them make a decision. So I've used this when I'm networked with people or when I'm meeting people, and even at one of my events, I'd say stuff like, what did you like the most about, this? Was it this or was it that? And then they actually have to choose which one of those it was, instead of saying, what did you like about my presentation? So it puts the answer in the listener's mind ahead of time. You could say, I can do it this day or that day, or I thought that was awesome, don't you? And they're like, yeah, right? There's a whole bunch of psychology behind that, but essentially leading questions is another powerful type of question that you can ask. So when we go back to the ears tool, I just want to reiterate this. You're encouraging. So first, okay, please tell me what you're thinking here. Would you be open to, they're having a conversation and you're listening, you're encouraging, you're showing that body language and activate your interest in the conversation. Then you're asking any of those 4 types of questions, right? So open questions, leading questions, probing, sometimes closed. And then reflect. This is the biggest piece. Reflect back what you heard. I mean, I had a conversation just the other day. We were going through a run through of this, and one of the team members said, you know what? I can sense when my husband had done that, right? He reflected back and it was unusual. I'm not used to it. You will get that reaction because people don't reflect very often, right? And this isn't just like not listening, picking a piece of info and throwing it back. It's actually actively listening and reflecting back that information. And then again, finally, summarizing it, because it tidies it all up in one nice big bow. So for you on timing, we're nailing the timing, eh, Joanne? That's good. 7 o'clock almost here. I've got these tools for you here. The first is the emotional appeals quiz, really finding out what your emotional appeal is. If you go to sandygerber.com, these are the tools that are available to you. My TED Talk's coming out. It is The Secret to Successful Romantic Relationships. It does talk about labeling, which has to do with emotional appeals. Like my husband's label, we have 3 labels for each other, and that's all we ever use. His is safety, value, and awesome, because he's awesome. And if he's always awesome, that sets the bar for me. I always put my mind at ease. You know what? He's awesome. So I give him the benefit of doubt. And mine are experience, achievement, and awesome. It may sound corny to you, but that works for us. So essentially, The Secret to Successful Romantic Relationships will come out soon, probably be on the TED channel in the next month or so. We just did it a couple weeks ago. And then what's blocking your communication? This is a great tool. There's 16 different communication blockers that we use, and it stops our conversations. And so this could be one that's like, maybe one's called sending solutions. So you're listening and you're thinking, what's the solution here? What's the solution here? You're not really listening, right? You're already on the solution here. There's a whole bunch of different blockers. It's a self-assessment you can just pull down and you'll immediately see where some of your hurdles are on your communication. If you're like, I just can't get through to them, or they're not taking me seriously, or you'll understand what's happening there. Another one here is your listening. How good is your listening? Really, it's a really honest look at how effective your listening is. Asks you some pretty pointed questions, easy assessment to fill out as well. And the final one is really, it's important to me in my heart, is how to not only help people communicate effectively to others, but how to communicate effectively to yourself. The inner chatter, the loop that we have that's so negative that, I got caught up in on the TEDx talk, just, oh, what are they going to think of this? And what are that? And there's that negative inner chatter that continues on loop. So this worksheet helps you to identify some of those repetitive patterns that you have with your inner chatter and start breaking them down, right? So some really valuable tools that I hope you'll take advantage of. And on that note, just want to thank you all for attending, for taking the steps to become an influential communicator when talking about money, and you'll be able to leverage what you learned today in all areas of your life. So sincerely want to thank you for your time and for joining me.
Thanks, Sandy. Whew, so much information. I was busy taking notes too. I was like, oh yes, stay on top. I have a job to do. But thank you. Before we move on to questions, and we've got some already starting to fill up our our Q&A tool at the bottom of your page. I'd like to remind everyone that our next Wise Money Talks seminar, our webinar, is coming up on Tuesday, April 27th at 6 p.m. And that'll be with Philip Wong, who's a portfolio analyst with Sophia Financial. His talk, Financial Fundamentals for Youth ages 16 to 25, will be providing an overview of the basics so that young adults can get a jump start on planning for their future. So if you know any young people in that age range, I think that's going to be a really good one to get them started, and then have them listen to Sandy's just after that so they get the both sides of the coin. If you'd like to be part of that session or know some young people who might be interested, they can register on our Sophia Wealth Academy website. And as always, all of our Wise Money Talk series are free. We're also excited to let you know that we've been able to extend the 50% discount on our Financial Empowerment Foundation's e-course until the end of May. This interactive and informative course teaches the basics of personal financial planning through the lens of your own values, economic needs, and priorities. And so it's just a really great opportunity if you're just really ready to dive in, or, it might be a great opportunity if you have some young people that want to start, planning for their future. It's also a great tool to give them that basics and tied in with Philip's talk as well. And then to access that discount when signing up for the e-course, use our Wise Money Talks coupon code WMT2021. And just note that when registering, you'll be charged in US dollars. And so basically it works out to 119, or at 50%, $59.50 American, and then Canadian, it'll translate to the Canadian dollars from there. And then as always, make sure that you're following us on all of our social media channels, as we have some exciting giveaways coming up over the next few months. And now on to our questions. Are you ready, Sandy?
Oh, sure. Yeah, bring it on.
I know you've been wanting this.
A couple in the chat too, so happy to answer any of those questions.
Yeah, I'll start with the one from Claire in the chat. And so basically she's asking, it may be what you were going to discuss, but could you talk a little bit about initiating a conversation like this in a work situation? Asking for more money, discussing pay increase, or in a business relationship?
Yeah, so happy to, because all of these apply in all areas of our life, right? So the first thing I'd say is to try and understand, try and assess. I know I just said not to, but try and understand if you're going to ask for money, if you're going to go and have that conversation, the person that you're speaking to, what do you think their emotional appeal is? Because what they need to hear is important, right? So when you're initiating that conversation, let's say there's what I've done for everything I'm going to have a very purposeful conversation. I plan it. That's the most important thing. And so what I do is I write SAVE, and I think save, right? So I write, okay, if this person was motivated by safety, what would that person need to hear? So the boss would say, why do you need money, right? Like, why does he or she believe that you need more money? How does it benefit them? How does it benefit the company? So you look at it and you go, okay, from a safety standpoint, you would pull out some of those words, and you'll get that in the quiz, but basically plan, security, I've done a great job making sure that everything is secure and stable. That's the kind of stuff that they would want to hear, right? So you'd say, can I have a conversation? I'd like to have a conversation with you about how I have provided value to the organization, and that I am a very secure position here. I have a plan that I've done for the department. I'm not sure what your role is, so I'm just being really vague, but essentially you do safety, achievement, value, and experience, and you write down what that person would need to hear to be open to the possibility of you increasing your income. And that's the key. I mean, it's just really looking at, it's all how you approach that conversation. And certainly you wouldn't just walk in and have that conversation. You have to plan it. So the best thing to do, I mean, anytime I'm going to have, even if I'm doing an introduction, just like this, I thought, okay, I got to make sure I have all 4 of those, because you don't know what their emotional appeal is. I had one client that was successful who had recognized that their boss was achievement. And so she went to the boss, and she had already written this stuff down, and she went to the boss and she said to the person, if I want to talk about our future together, and I want to talk about how I can really help to grow this company and make it a performer. And that person was like, what? Right? So the thing is, remember, any conversation you're going to have, they want to know how it's going to benefit them first. So make sure that's in your messaging.
Perfect. Thanks, Sandy. We also, there were some cute comments of somebody where their partner was just looking over their shoulder and ended up listening to the whole conversation. So you captivated them, which is great. And it just, I think
Well,
it's
that's going to be an interesting conversation in that home, isn't it?
yeah. And thankfully, there'll be some helpful tools that they can go and download to help keep that conversation going. All right. So we have another question. Any tips on having an effective conversation with yourself? As a solo
Oh,
person, if you're experience driven and want to get on track with a budget, or just how to budget more effectively when solo as an experience driven person.
awesome question. I mean, they're all good questions, but the thing I can talk completely about this one because I'm driven by experience. So to sit down and do budgeting, by yourself, you don't have any additional input. I mean, first of all, turn that into a positive experience, right? It may be something you want to look at. There's different ways you could do that. It has to be a positive experience for you to be in it. You're not going to want to do all that work over and over again. So it has to be in a format that you enjoy, or you have to work with people that are going to make it a pleasant experience. That's the key here, right? So you could maybe find a tool online, a template of a tool that's going to help you, an interactive tool to help you do budgeting, or you could contact a financial planner. You could contact a person that's going to help that experience be more enjoyable for you. Those are the only things. If you're motivated by experience, you have to have a tool or some person to help you enjoy that experience.
Perfect. I think, and there's a question that came up that I sort of noticed myself when we were planning ahead of time. It's just how does the emotional appeal change as you age?
Yeah, it does. It's based on, well, Roy Garn did all this study in the 60s, and he, thousands of people went through this process and this research, and they determined that you can determine your emotional appeal as early as 6 years of age, right? So it's developed at that time. And then as your life experiences happen, they change, right? So it depends. Like if you're born into a home with some great struggle and difficulty, safety may be your emotional appeal. And then over time, as that maybe became more of a secure environment for you, or things, evolved and changed because of life experiences, yes, your emotional appeal will change over time. And just as I referred to with when I lost my parents, my emotional appeals change with your life experiences. So it does over time.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's kind of good to kind of go back to some of these assessments, especially as you have huge life-changing sort of things going on through your lifetime. It's good just to kind of go back to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's really like this is a communication tool. So it's really helpful to go to the people that matter to you the most and even just say, I think I learned this about myself tonight, right? I think I learned this, or I'm interested in understanding more about this. And what do you think you are? I mean, that day that I found that book and I devoured it in one sitting, I went into the office on the Monday and started talking to one of my team members about it. And I was ignited. And that person was like, I'm achievement, I'm value. And so it starts this whole conversation. And now because my family, everybody around me knows what their emotional appeal is, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it opens up this wonderful conversation, right? We're not scared to say what we want. We're not scared to say what we emotionally need. And that's just so free. Like it just gives you this wonderful sense of care and empathy for the people in your life. I mean, they may be really annoying. And then now you know why. Because essentially what's important to them may not be the same thing that's important to you. And that's okay. I think we need to be aware, especially today with all that's going on in the world. We need to be more empathetic to what others are going through. And the only way we can do that is by understanding what's emotionally driving them.
That makes good sense. I remember when we learned about the languages of love and sort of just how that opened up, like with kids and with adults, and how just knowing where they're coming from allowed us to really appreciate and go a little bit deeper, with everything. And so I can see with what you're doing that that's the same thing around money and
Yeah.
expanding that.
And
So the other,
mind that like it's not just about money here. This affects
yeah,
everything. It affects it affects your job choice, your hobbies, the friends you choose, like every decision you make, what you're purchasing, where you're spending your time, all those things tie directly right back to your emotional appeal. It's quite eerie actually, how much it impacts your life.
yeah. And is that what your book, like what the book that you're working on, are you going to be like everything that you talked about tonight? Is that sort of going to be expanded upon in the book
Yes.
itself?
Yes. So there's the book right now, we're looking at spring 2022, and there's really three sections to the book. First is really the discovery of emotional appeals and how that came about. And it's really done in a playfully, this is who I am, this is how I write. It's done in a playful, engaging manner. It's very honest, very truthful. And then the second part is the emotional appeals, the bulk of the book. Here's the tool. Here's how you can self-assess and use it. And then the third is, now that I know this, what do I do with it, right? How do I communicate to other people about it? How do I make sure that people know what my label is, their label? And that's where that all comes into play.
Okay. And like, do you think like the emotional appeals, are they the same at home as they are at work? Or would they be a little bit different, do you think?
It's a great question. No, they can be different, right? Because we're different people at home than we are at work, right? So for some, they may be motivated by achievement at work, right? It's really important to them. But at home, it's more, maybe experience or safety. So we choose, it all depends on how comfortable we are with sharing who we really are and what we really emotionally need with people in a work environment. So I find I can tell by their career choice. I can tell by their career choice what emotional appeal they are, but that's because I've been in it and developed it, right? So what Roy Garn wrote is different. I've evolved it from then. I've made it more simple to understand. He used terminology that was a little bit more difficult to absorb, and also I just made it more sensible. I was able to discern how this applied to my life and then started sharing it with others in a simplified way.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that come out, Sandy. So the last question, which is my personal favorite, and forgot to prep you on this one, but what are you reading right now?
Oh, I read tons of books. I love it. Well, I've got one right here that is Play Bigger. And this is a business book, but I'm in marketing and communications. This is about how to, when I'm not doing this, I actually have a full-time gig where I'm a marketing executive for one of Canada's fastest growing vertical farms. And so they're having a huge impact on the world. And that's why I joined. Like, they're just this significance opportunity to make a real impact on our world. We really need it. And so this book helps me with that. I'm also reading, because I love experience, I'm reading Richard Branson's The Virginity book, because it's all about his story and the stories he has about how he built Virgin and the empire and things like that. And then every day I read the soul story. So basically I have this, it's a 33-day little bites of, I'll give you guys the title and the link, but it's little bite-sized pieces, breakfast and evening. And I read them. So when I wake up, when I'm drying my hair, and then when I go to bed, and it sets my mind into a really great place.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Sandy, and lots of thank yous in the chat as well. People, I think, were really engaged and completely, enthralled in what you were saying. And I think we're all dying to learn more. And I'm sure that people will be heading over to your website fairly quickly to download the tools. And just to let you know, people, that everyone, that we will also be having all those links on the webinar page, and also be doing a blog, which will have all the links to the various tools as well. But again, thank you, Sandy. Just so informative, so much information. And I realized that I think I'm experienced as well with a smidgen of value. So, so I'm going to have to go in and do the test and just dive in a little bit deeper as well. But thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm just so happy to share this information to help people. It really changed my life, so I know it will change yours. So it was an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much, Sophia Wealth Academy, for all you're doing, especially for women, to empower them, to make us feel connected, and to help us to continue to grow. So thank you, Joanne. Thank you, the entire team. Much appreciate that.
Yeah, it was so fun to be able to have this. We've been waiting for a long time. It was lovely to have this opportunity to be your host for tonight. So again, before we head off, I just want to remind everyone that once you sign off from the webinar, you'll be asked to do a short survey, basically less than a minute. And your feedback is super important to us and to Sandy, and helps us as we move forward with designing other webinars in the near future. So you can just take a moment to do that survey. That would be greatly appreciated. We would also like to invite you to check out our Sophia Wealth Academy website. We now have a regular blog feature, and you can find out more about other upcoming events, such as our Wise Money Talk series and our Wise Money Moves podcast, as well as other resources. And just finally, just really want to thank you for joining us today and asking great questions and participating in the polls. And we hope that you have a wonderful evening. But we also want to remind you that to come and join us for the next webinar with Philip, and that also, stay tuned on all of our social media channels, as we have some exciting news coming and giveaways coming up in the next few months. So stay tuned and have a great evening. And Sandy, thanks again. Just such a
Thanks so
great
much.
seminar. And
Have a good night.
we look forward to seeing you again. Thanks,
Good night.
everybody.